So there's a trend in the WNBA media. Anyone who stands a player not named Caitlin Clark equals good. Anyone who either reports objectively or is in any sort of way fan of Caitlin Clark equals bad. And we've seen that with what has happened with Annie Costabile, who is the best, without question, the best WNBA journalist. Like, and the funny thing is, people are like, oh, she's only positive towards Indiana. Like, she was the person who broke the Satu was not going to be signing Indiana. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's not happening. She was the first person, as far as I'm aware, that one of the first people that said Satu was going to the Mercury. Her and Alexa Philippou from ESPN break 75% of the news. They break almost all the news. And when they don't, well, when someone else gets the scoop, crickets. You don't hear either one of them complaining that Shams broke the Jewel Lloyd trade, because Jewel Lloyd is a Clutch client, and Shams obviously has the in with Clutch. They just go and do their job. Whereas the fake media, who are basically just stands, have huge problems with that. And again, my biggest takeaway from this is, like, during the Twitter space from, I think it was like June or early July. It was the start of June, because Cam Brink was still playing. They said rookie of the year was between, these are people again the WNBA are pushing, was between Cam Brink and Angel Reese. And the WNBA also, like, has pushed a Twitter account who, I'm not joking, anytime someone gets into an argument with her, responds letting them know the fact that she carries. Like, madness. But Annie Constable is responding to a tweet here, basically demanding that she gets kicked out of Chicago, basically demanding that her newspaper fires her because she's in a Chicago-based newspaper. She is in a Chicago-based newspaper, and because she is critical of the Chicago Sky, because it has been a poverty franchise for so long. Mind you, she's not critical about the players. She's not out there being critical of Angel Reese. She's not there being critical of Cardoso. She is critical of the franchise, the people that have ran the organization into the ground over the last number of years, which is completely fine. She then just says, should I start charging rent for the way I stay on y'all's nerves? This is obviously a Chicago Sky fan. I need Annie out of Chicago immediately. What did she do? Look at how she frames this question. What did she say?
That really sold you on the Sky. You liked his transparency and his honesty with you. I'm curious, like, what his sell was that really sold you, especially when considering, like, this was a team that did not succeed last year. They struggled a lot, and there was a lot of transition coming into this new year. What about that seemed like a good thing to sign up for?
It's fair. I mean, that's a fair question. That's an absolutely fair question. Like, honestly, maybe she could have done without, like, the second part of the question, talking about, well, like, what, like, the team had struggled, what was his pitch. In fairness, like, makes no difference. It's a perfectly valid question. It is a valid question. And then, obviously, someone just said, if the Mystics had a beat reporter holding the front office accountable like you do, maybe the front office ownership wouldn't be as terrible and directionless. Yeah, I have no idea what the Mystics are doing, in fairness. But, like, imagine saying a team underperformed, they lost their franchise player, main shooter, halfway 4 or 5 stars, and was still one game away from the playoffs. They won, like, 14 of 40. If I'm not mistaken, did they not win, like, 14 of 40 games or something? Like, I'm sorry, like, that's not good. Just because, like, you got into the playoffs with 15, you could have got into the playoffs with 15 wins, does not mean that you've had a good season. The team struggled, and by the way, their best player by 100 miles was Kennedy Carter. And I'm wrong, the Chicago Sky went 13 and 27. They won 13 of 40 games. They went 13 and 27. I'm sorry, what? It's like saying an NBA team succeeded if they won 25 games. Like, there'd be other seasons. They won the same amount of games the Fever did when they got Caitlin Clark. But here's the best thing. We'll never understand folks expecting reporters to act like stans. I think it's because there's a lot of stans posing as reporters in women's sports space. That's 100% the fact. That is 100% the fact. And by the way, like, look, there's a big difference between, for example, somebody on YouTube. Like, there are, like, to say that I don't have personal biases is wrong. I'm a person who talks into a microphone. I'm not a reporter. I don't ever claim to be. And then there are plenty of people that I strongly disagree with on here that I think say outrageous things, but we're not reporters. We're not reporters. There's a different standard to be held for being a reporter and just being somebody with a microphone talking into things. And the problem is that the WNBA over the years has had such a hard time finding reporters that companies are hiring effectively stans. Like, we had one person talking about the Seattle Storm situation and calling the Seattle Storm coach by a nickname. Like, it's not good. And we've got, like, reporters, like, that are fine hurling racial insults at Caitlin Clark. Like, you've got it, like, basically saying they felt scared when they showed up to watch the Indiana Fever because the fans were too loud. Like, it's the mad thing is, like, and that's the thing where it's like Annie Costabile, she's actually reports news. Whether or not you like the framing of that question, just admit you would want a Chicago Sky stand. And in fairness, maybe you would. But there's plenty of places where you can go to get Chicago Sky stands. There are. You can go onto YouTube. Like, you can find stands of anyone on social media. You can find stands of anyone on YouTube. You can find updates on anything on social media that you want. And that's completely fine. It's very much different when you're reporting for a newspaper. You gotta be factual. And unfortunately, Chicago Sky have been a poverty franchise for way too long. And this is such a big point. There are a lot of stands posing as reporters. They got jobs. They got jobs based on the fact that they were maybe the only person that applied for them. You want to act as a stan account, isn't certain players asset or reporting the reality of a poverty franchise. I think y'all understand what the scans culture infiltrating WNBA media negatively affects the entire league. Of course it does. Of course it does. They're to at them. I'm just like, I'm sick of these people. I'm absolutely sick of these people. It's like, you're not much better being unbiased. Fun little quiz from Lindsay today. According to it, I'm a Caitlin Clark stan, which is somewhat upsetting because I've gone up and down on until now without using that word. I mean, what is a word across between a fan and what? Like, I don't know. Like, pot calling the kettle black. Why? Because and by the way, it's literally just Chicago Sky fans hate her because she reports on a poverty franchise. And by the way, that is not talking about the players. I, in fact, think their future is okay. I, in fact, like, I'm one of the people that rates Angel Reese highly. I rate Cardoso so highly. If Cardoso just learns to be aggressive in getting the ball, she'll be the best big in the league. I really like Michaela Onyemere as a player. And if Olivia Miles falls into their lap, like, they got a good squad there. They got a good squad there for the future. It doesn't change the fact that what James Wade did, like, was so bad. You may as well have had the lefty darts player James Wade making all decisions. And I still think he would have made better basketball decisions than James Wade did. Like, they train in a freaking YMCA gym. They don't have their own locker room. It's a poverty franchise. And it's fair enough to call a poverty franchise a poverty franchise. It's nothing to do with the players. Like, the Connecticut Sun were one of the best teams in W last year. It's still a poverty franchise. But, like, it's the maddest thing. Says the reporter who instigates Stan Twitter the most. There's a difference between... People are genuinely dumb. Like, there's a difference between what somebody says on Twitter versus, again, what somebody reports. Read anything she's ever written. She's the only journalist who will actually report, positive or negative, about any team. And again, if you're like, oh, she's so, like, anti-everything. Like, she was the first person to report the Sloot Sloot might have gone to Chicago. She actually broke the Sloot to Chicago News. And she was the first person that said Satu had no interest in Indiana. Like, I don't get it. People are just dumb. People are genuinely just dumb. Like, you've got people legitimately, like, she's not negative when you speak on the Sky. I'm sorry. Like, people are genuinely that dumb. People are dumb enough to think where it's like reporting positively on the Fever, who are a positive organization, and not even reporting negatively on the Sky. Like, genuinely, they literally called for her head. They called for her to be fired from her job because she wrote an article saying Satu Sabally does not want to go to Chicago. That, like, literally, that's what they're calling for her head. They're calling for her head because they called for her head last time because she said Satu doesn't want to go to Chicago. No shit, she literally said facilities were her main thing. Chicago Sky don't have their own changing room. They don't have their own locker room. Of course. Oh, madness. Absolute madness. But at the same time, please, WNBA stands infiltrating the media. Please keep saying dumb shit online because I can respond to that dumb shit and keep making money. Please do that. And by the way, and like you might be seeing, there's a lot worse stuff being said by like other YouTube channels. Heck, you could probably say, I've definitely said things out of pocket myself. There's a big difference between like the Angel Reese Stan Showtime YouTube account, which just out of sight, out of mind. It's somebody speaking their mind on YouTube. Anyone's allowed to do that. Versus a credentialed journalist responding positively to a post calling Caitlin Clark white bread. Not calling her that, referring to her as, instead of her name, as white bread. Responding positively to that post. Like, there's a big difference between someone on YouTube and, an accredited journalist. Or a credentialed journalist. Whatever. See you guys.